Today you're going to start with the basics of Photoshop. So the first thing that I would like you to do is go to Finder and Applications, and here is the Adobe Photoshop folder. Remember, we're working currently in version CS4. If you double click on it, here is the actual program. Before you open it, I would like you to go ahead and drag it and dock it on your dock. That way you don't have to go into Finder and Applications each time you need to open it. When you first launch Photoshop, this is what the program looks like, more or less. You may have some different icons, panels open, but you see your desktop background here behind it. If you accidentally click on your background, Photoshop disappears. All you have to do is go back to your dock and click on the program, and there it is. Now, in order to start a new file, you have to come up here to the File menu. Choose New if you're starting a new file, Open if you're wanting to open a photograph or something that you've already started. Here you have the ability to go ahead and give it a name, and here I can just go ahead and put in period number, underscore, last name. Make sure you do your last name, and then I'm going to call this PS for Photoshop Practice. Preset, you have some different preset sizes here. Obviously, US paper makes it 8.5 by 11 inches. You have the ability to change it to legal, to tabloid, or you could go in and change this to a specific size you like. Notice that the menu over here on the right, the drop-down menu, you can choose what kind of measurement you want to use, whether it's pixels, inches, centimeters, millimeters, points, picas, or columns. Typically, when we work, we are either going to be using pixels or inches. And pixels we typically do when we're wanting something to be for the web. And then inches is just because that's what we're more accustomed to. Resolution is how many pixels are per inch. Now, typically when we create a web graphic, it's going to be 72 pixels per inch, but obviously the more pixels there are per inch, the more clear and the more high quality the graphic will be. The next thing you see here is your color mode, and this is important right here. If you click on this little drop down menu, you have a few options: bitmap, grayscale, RGB, CMYK, and lab color. When we create graphics for computer, whether it be web or just that we want to keep digital, we're probably going to use RGB because that color model goes with computers. If we are wanting to create something that we use for print, then we would use CMYK. I'm going to go ahead and switch this to RGB. The next thing we have is the background contents. You can choose to have a white background color. You can make your own background color, or you can make it transparent. It's up to you. And all of this, no matter which one of these you choose, it can be adjusted once you create your image. Down here under Advanced, I'll go ahead and collapse that because we won't get into that. I'm going to click OK. And here I have my working document. Now, down here at the top, bottom left of my working document, you can see where it says 16.67%. That's how much it's zoomed in or zoomed out. So what I'm looking at here on my computer is the size of it is only 16.67% of its original full size. If I wanted to see something full size, I could either type in 100% and then hit return, at which point you would see that I have my scroll bars having to move a whole way. Whoops, I selected something that I didn't mean to. Or if I start here at 16%, I can also use the plus and minus key on my keyboard. If I hold down the command key while I use those two shortcuts, the plus and the plus will zoom it in a little bit at a time. You can see that number changing. The minus will zoom out and make it smaller a little bit at a time. Now, on the left-hand side, we have all of our tools, everything over here. At the very top, just like we do in every other program, we have our menu bar. And depending on what tool we have, we may use different parts of the menu bar. Up here we have the options area. And again, depending on what we have selected, notice how the options are changing with that. Okay, so whenever you choose a tool, you have to look up here so that you can make the necessary changes to make sure that everything looks the way that it should. And then finally we have what are called panels. And our panels are collapsible with this little double arrow. They can be expanded. They can be resized to where it's just the picture icon as opposed to a tab with the name on it. Whoops, let me expand that again. Here you have a word describing the panel. So it's up to you as to how much space you want on your screen so that you know how big you want this to be. But they are all there. You can double click to expand or collapse, just like this. And the one that you always want to have open is your layers panel. Your layers panel is important because notice this background layer. Every time you create something, you want to add new layers. Sometimes it does it automatically for you. Other times you have to do it yourself. You can delete layers, but this helps you organize your document. So layers are important to keep open. The other thing that you are going to find is important to keep open is your history panel. Now, a lot of times programs have or allow you to Command Z to undo. Photoshop has that, except for they only allow it to go back one time. So once you need to undo a step more than once, that's when you have to go to the history panel. So right here on the history panel, you can see everything that I've done so far. And you can see that as I move up this stacking order, that it undoes what I did. So here you can see that I just undid where I deleted the layers. Here they are back, okay? And then all the way back up whatever I needed to do. So that's an important one to have open. Now, sometimes you may accidentally close a panel that you want open. If that happens, you can always find it under the window menu, and you can move these panels closer to your workspace, and you can dock them. Notice when I dock it, it's got that like blue line, and that basically allows me to put it into the space that I want. Same thing with these tools over here. You can move them around, and if I grab a hold, there's little tiny dots right here. If I grab a hold of those dots and drag them back, there's a blue line showing me that I can dock them back there. You can also adjust your toolbar over here, your tools, into two columns or a single column. I personally like the single column, but you may find that two columns helps you more. And then finally, whenever you're saving a Photoshop file, there's two things, or possibly two things you have to do. Number one, you always want to do a file save. And it's going to pop up with, remember how I put this in at the beginning as the title? So it automatically put that there for me. And then it put the extension .psd. That means that it is a Photoshop document. And before you ever save it as anything else, you always want to save it with that file extension, because that means that you can go back in and edit all of the layers as you did in your original file. Now, I'm not able right now to connect to schools, but you always want to go and find Cougar 11 on the side. If you don't see it, you should do go connect to server, okay? But other than that, you should always do that so that you can save in your folder that is in schools. Remember that if you save on your desktop, it might not be there the next time you log onto the computer. It also won't be there if you need to move to a different computer. So I'm going to go ahead and save that as a Photoshop file. Now, when you are ready and you have created everything and you are done with everything that you need to for that assignment or that project, that's when you also, besides saving it as a Photoshop file, you do a save as and you change the format. Now, typically the format that you are going to be asked to change it to is a JPEG. And a JPEG is a file that is commonly associated with photographs. It allows for lots of different colors. If you're doing something that's more solid colors like a cartoon or comic, then you might choose this, which is a GIF file. And then the third one that you might do every once in a while, but it's really going to be mostly the JPEG and the GIF, is going to be a PNG or a PNG file. But those are really the only three that you would do, and those are the three types that you would upload to your blog, to your Google site. If you upload the Photoshop file to your Google site, whoever opens it actually has to have Photoshop in order to view it. A JPEG, a GIF, and a PNG file can be viewed on all computers, and therefore when you upload those, anybody on any computer would be able to see the image. They wouldn't have to have Photoshop to see it. So I'm going to go ahead and save this as a JPEG. Whoops, there it is. And then I would hit save. And the next thing is it asks you your image options, whether you want a small file with low quality or high quality and a large file. Depending on what you're doing, you have to kind of decide where that goes, but for our purposes, probably somewhere around a 10 is going to be fine. And then we'll leave this alone and click OK. Now, just so that you can see both of these files, when you look at them, they look exactly the same when I'm looking at them here on my desktop. The only difference is you can see the file extension .psd, .jpg. Okay, so that is your introduction to the workspace in Photoshop. The next thing you're going to do is you are going to work on your selection tools.